You are about to discover the story of a man who stood against emperors, endured exile after exile, faced persecution from powerful forces, and still refused to abandon the truth. A man remembered by a striking title, Athanasius, Against the World. But what kind of conviction does it take to stand firm when everyone else chooses the easier path? If you value content that strengthens your faith and reveals real stories that shaped the church, subscribe to the channel and leave your like, because it helps this message reach more people. In the early 4th century, in Alexandria, Egypt, a boy was born who did not seem destined to change church history. His name was Athanasius. From a young age, he showed remarkable intelligence and a strong faith, something rare in a time marked by theological conflicts and recent persecutions of Christians. Athanasius grew up in an environment where faith was not just tradition, but a courageous choice. He became close to Bishop Alexander of Alexandria, who quickly recognized his potential. He became his disciple, his assistant, and eventually, his successor. It was during this time that one of the greatest doctrinal crises in church history emerged: Arianism. This heresy, promoted by Arius, claimed that Jesus Christ was not truly God, but a created being. It sounded reasonable to many, but it struck at the very core of Christian faith. Athanasius immediately understood the danger. If Christ were not God, then he could not fully save humanity. Redemption would lose its meaning. Christianity would become merely a moral philosophy, rather than the revelation of God himself. In 325, still a young man, Athanasius participated in the Council of Nicaea, called by Emperor Constantine. There, the Church clearly declared that Christ is of the same substance as the Father, true God, from true God. This was not just theology, it was a defining line between truth and error. But what seemed settled was only the beginning. After the council, Arianism continued to spread, supported by political leaders and even some bishops. Pressure on Athanasius increased. When he became Bishop of Alexandria, he became the leading defender of orthodoxy. Then came the exiles. Athanasius was exiled not once, not twice, but 5 times. He spent years away from his diocese, hunted by those who wanted to silence him. He was falsely accused, slandered, threatened. Emperors demanded compromise. Many church leaders hesitated. Some even gave in. But Athanasius stood firm. He was not defending a personal opinion. He was defending the truth about who Christ is. Amid persecution, he wrote essential works, such as on the Incarnation, explaining with clarity and depth the mystery of God becoming man to save humanity. At times, it seemed he stood alone. That is where the phrase, Athanasius against the world, originated. But in reality, he was never alone. He stood with the truth, and that was enough. During his exiles, he found refuge among desert monks, especially influenced by Saint Anthony, whose life he helped spread. This strengthened his spirituality, showing that true strength comes not from power, but from union with God. Over time, the truth Athanasius defended prevailed. Arianism weakened. The faith of the Church was preserved. What seemed like a solitary struggle became a victory for all Christianity. Athanasius eventually returned to Alexandria and continued his ministry until his death in 373. His legacy is not only theological, but deeply spiritual. He showed that faithfulness to God requires courage, perseverance, and often the willingness to stand against the majority. Today, his story confronts us directly. How often do we choose silence to avoid conflict? How often do we soften the truth to be accepted? How often do we give in to pressure? Athanasius teaches that truth does not depend on majority opinion. It remains, even when rejected. And more than that, he reminds us that following Christ is not comfortable, but it is true. The question remains simple, yet profound. If you were in Athanasius' place, would you stand firm or give in? The faith you live today may be tested tomorrow. And when that moment comes, your decision will define not only your path, but the impact your life will have. If this story strengthened your faith, subscribe to the channel and leave your like, because together, we can take this message further.